All right, guys. Hey, it's Jason with Kentucky Sustainable Living. I've got today Ed from the Iridium Group up in Canada. He is going to talk to us about radiation protection and chemical protection. Ed, it's great to have you here. I'm glad you took some time to talk to us. We'll start everything. Who is Ed? And tell us about the Iridium Group and kind of your background on how you can talk about these subjects with us.
Jason, thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. It's morning where I'm at. From a radiation standpoint, I spent 20 years as an industrial radiographer, carrying around radioisotopes that are, capable of harming humans. We used them mostly for inspection of welds, pipelines, chemical plants, oil and gas refineries, but not limited to. We've done, stuff on submarines, boats, planes, all that stuff. That changed for me in about 2010, where I started incorporating security components to radiation. And I started doing a little freelance work, teaching people, agencies, and organizations how to mix radiation safety practices with security of their devices or of their people around those devices. And that sort of morphed into this module, this learning that I call radiation protection. And over the years, I've followed a bit of a security path. I'm a licensed security professional in BC and a body armor salesperson. Up here in Canada, I'm a firearms instructor, which isn't the same as an American firearms instructor. Up here, our firearm safety course is very basic course, but the same people who have to wear guns on their hip for a living need to know things like how to put a gas mask on and how to be aware about radiation. So part of what we started doing back before the Iridium Group was a thing that the public knew about is consulting with professionals and agencies, both here and in other sort of allied nations, to just sort of raise their general level of awareness. And I'm not talking about building atomic weapons and taking them apart and stuff. I'm talking about at its core, the police officer who's got to go in and do a call in the middle of the night in an industrial zone, and all of a sudden there's all these radiation warning signs and things aren't feeling right. Like, what do we do about that? Or a person who is traveling back and forth to work on a day-to-day basis, and hears on the radio that there's been some sort of a radiation emergency. What do they do about that? So at a very basic level, I started teaching people really fundamental concepts that just about anybody can put into practice to make it so that the fear, the specter of radiation gets diminished a bit, so that it's not this scary thing that you don't know anything about, but you're just afraid of. It's now something you can understand. And when you can understand things, you start to have some control out of them. So that's the radiation aspect of what the Iridium Group does. And I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm happy to sort of make it more public facing these days.
Oh yeah, and that is. I mean, and a lot of people don't realize how much radioactive material is really transported
Sure.
on an everyday basis. And before we got on the live, I was telling you about one job I had. We had a radioactive material in the truck with us for checking densities of rock and soil for construction sites, and it's just the paperwork that goes with it, and your badge, and all the training just for that. And it was not a super high concentration or a super high amount of that, but just that little bitty bit. There was protocols. If you had a wreck or something like that, it was a big deal for sure. So I think it's a great thing for people. I think the radioactive part of it, everybody gets scared and they're like, oh my gosh, if I touch any kind of radioactive stuff, I'm immediately going to die, kind of thing. And everybody else is, kind of like, yeah, nuclear war, everybody's just going to die immediately, kind of thing. So that and I've talked to some people and it's like, oh, I don't want to live through a nuclear war because everybody's just going to die. And I'm like, well, it really kind of depends,
I hear that a lot too. Yeah. That's a prevailing comment of people who have said, you know what, like, I've got other things to worry about. This isn't something I want to be, get some expertise in. I'm just going to go, listen, if it happens, we're toast. I don't want to be alive, and therefore I don't need to learn about it, and that's fine. I understand that.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, literally everything on this planet is bombarded with radiation all the time. And fundamentally, radiation is what drives evolution. So it's sort of both unavoidable and inescapable. The best thing that we can do with it is understand it and mitigate its sort of short-term risks to us, right? So and radiation doesn't have to mean ionizing gamma or X-ray radiation, or particulate radiation that you inhale and you start to get cancer inside your bodies. Electromagnetic radiation is electromagnetic radiation. If that's the radio waves and the cell phones, if that's microwaves to some degree, if that's ultraviolet light, regular light, those things all follow the same principle, which is good for us because it means that anything that we can use to stop a sufficient amount of light, we can scale up to be a sort of protection measure against a sufficient amount of radiation. And also, we tend to think we understand light. Like the individual person walking around tends to feel like they have a pretty good concept of how light works. Now, that's not true. Most people have no idea of how light propagates through space, or whether it can go around corners, what it bounces off of, what colors mean, and all that. And so that's obviously a deeper level. But in the same way that you can not know all that extra stuff about light and still live your entire life and do useful things with light when you need it and ignore it when you don't need it, the same holds true for sort of radiation, and even ionizing radiation, because the truth of the matter is most people spend a lot more time being worried about it than they'll ever spend around it in their life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And can you explain kind of there's three really, explain the different types of radiation to the people, as far as I've delved into it just a little bit. And like Chuck Peoples is in here, and he said time, distance, and shielding. And that's the big three things that I've come up with and read about it is, to mitigate it is time, distance, and shielding on everything.
Yeah. And in that order. So a couple of things. First of all, when you think about ionizing radiation, so gamma or X-rays, and gamma and X-rays are really the same type of radiation. The different names come into play about how they were created, but they're high energy photons traveling at the speed of light with no rest mass. If we go to the World War scenario and you talk about a nuclear detonation, by the time you've seen the light, okay, because these things travel at the speed of light, by the time that light reaches your eyes, the ionizing radiation, the gamma burst, and that's already done.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it anymore because whatever you were going to pick up, you've already picked up. Now, well, but obviously, I'm trying not to be too insensitive to the topic because depending on how close you are, that might be a life-ending amount. And in almost every case, if you are able to visually see a nuclear detonation, your way of life is probably ruined, realistically. But so time, distance, and shielding, in the most simple terms possible, in order of priority, reduce the amount of time spent in a radiation zone. Okay, create as much distance between you and that radiation zone, and put the densest objects between you and that radiation zone possible. Time works because it's not that radiation saturation of the body is logarithmic. Like it's not exponential per se, but like a radioisotope emitting gamma radiation emits them on a wavelength. And so it's not like it's just shooting the same energy level into you all the time. It's up and down and up and down. And so there's a little bit of variability there. And so if you are in a zone of a given intensity, 100 milliroentgens per hour, let's say, if you're standing there, well, for every second that you're in there, you're soaking up radiation. If you're in that zone for 15 seconds, right, that's 1,500 milliroentgens. If you're in that zone for 2 seconds, it's 200.
Yeah.
Right. And so often when we were training back in the early 2000s, we'd do an exercise, just a paper exercise. It said, if you have to set up a radioisotope to take a radiograph of a weld on a corner of a street, would it be okay? Like, would people be able to walk past? No, too close and they're there for too long. But you're right beside a street. Would cars be able to drive past at 40 kilometers an hour? Or, I don't know, 20, let's say 25 miles an hour, whatever the correlation is. But all you have to do is do a little bit of math and figure out how few seconds they're actually in the given intensity zone to realize that that's not a big threat.
Yeah.
And so time is also one of the easiest things that you can manipulate when it comes to radiation safety, to radiation protection. Like, you can just, be there for less time. And being there for less time has a component of distance too, because obviously if you're not there, you probably made some distance, but you may step behind a piece of concrete and have it be shielding as well. And that's why time works with both of those, distance and shielding. So the less time you're in the zone, the better off you're going to be. Before we go any further, I mean, it's important to note that without something like this, and this is the Canadian version, but there's lots of old American, civil defense versions, or, personal dosimeters of whatever flavor you like. Without something like that, the human body has no way to know that it's in a radiation zone, how potent that radiation zone, none of it. That's not one of the senses that we were built with. And so, having a good piece of radiation detection equipment is pretty mandatory, unless you're going to, find yourself left just listening to the news to have them tell you, where the danger is coming from, and
Yeah.
you go the other way.
Because they tell you the truth.
Because they tell you the truth all the time. I hear it's sustainability of us, not sustainability of government.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
They tell you the water's fine in Ohio too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, nothing's dying there.
No.
Okay, so that's time. Distance, for every time you double your distance from whatever the source of the radiation is, the intensity of that radiation gets cut to 1/4.
Okay.
So if you're standing, 1 yard away and it's 1,000 Rontgens per hour, right? If you go to 2 yards, it's 250.
Gotcha.
If you go to 4 yards, it's quarter of that. So really quickly, distance is helpful in reducing radiation intensity. People would think, well, then distance is probably the number one thing I should think of. And the problem is, most people who end up with radiation sickness end up statistically having been in a low intensity radiation field for a long period of time because they didn't know it was there.
Gotcha.
And so that's why time becomes, a critical factor, because even like over days, you just sort of hanging out, doing stuff around your house or whatever, that accumulates really quickly. If you don't know to run away and leave, then you don't have any help that way. And then shielding, which is the sort of, it's like personal protective equipment on the job site, right? Like PPE is the last line of defense. We put, engineering controls in place, administrative controls in place to try to reduce harm and increase safety. And then at the bottom, right at the bottom, there's steel toe boots, gloves, and a hard hat, stuff like that. And that's because it's sort of the least effective, because it depends on a bunch of other factors being in place. If I go to a site and we need to open up a radiation source, and it's going to be blasting at 360 degrees, and there's a D8 cat right there that I can just park in front of that, so that none of the members of the public are at risk, that's cool.
Yeah.
If there's no D8 there, then it's like, all right, now how are we going to figure this out? Also, shielding tends to be big, bulky, and or heavy, and the bigger, the bulkier, and the heavier, the less man portable.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having more solid walls in your house, so that you don't have to go out into a particular radiation zone. Then I like the idea of people thinking about carrying around lead aprons, or some other sort of man portable shielding. It's like with body armor, for example, right? You can never wear enough body armor to make it so that you want to get shot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm wearing a level 4 plate right here, and I know it'll defeat armor piercing 30-06, it's still very foolish of me to stand there and be like, I'm okay, just shoot me. Because if he shoots me here, that's
Yeah.
the armor didn't do anything. So then I need more armor. So I put armor on the arms and armor on the legs and armor on the head. And now you can't move, right?
Yeah.
And now you're a human trying to be a tank. And humans make poor tanks, right? Right. And then you're, because you can't move, you're being shot a lot and the armor
Yeah.
fails and you don't win. It's the same thing with scaling up shielding for radiation. The radiation is uncaring of all of our sort of hopes and dreams. It's just going to do what it does, right? All it is high speed photons and electrons just shooting around.
Yeah.
And so I try to get people to think about shielding as the sort of last line of defense, not the first. And that might be the same. Like in your house, if you've got a lot of water stored up inside, right? And for whatever reason, there's a nuclear emergency outside, and you can't effectively leave your house, or you decided not to, which both are fair. Like large 45-gallon drums or IBC totes of water that might be in your garage, stacking those up and then being on the other side of them from the radiation that's coming through your house, that's effective.
Yeah.
Right. That's the sort of thing where it starts to give you some shielding.
And also, I've looked at it too. There's charts online that I've seen. You know, this amount of material will cut your exposure by X amount, and it's a good thing to look at. Of, you know, how much I need to actually stop some of that radiation from coming into your house and everything. And I've looked at some stuff and expedited shelters and stuff like that, and pretty much with your shielding, it really comes down to mass, right? It's pretty much
Yep.
what I've seen. So
the thing is, like with the body armor, with body armor, you're hoping that your shooter is facing you in a direction that is favorable for the armor to take the shot.
yeah.
Right. So like drivers in convoys, you know, wearing big plates. It's like, I'm in a truck, I'm in a convoy. That's cool. But the shooter is down in a ditch shooting up, right? And you end up getting shot in the thigh or shot up in the thoracic cavity behind the armor. The armor was not cool. What you wanted was a shooter to be standing out on the road in front of you and you know, shoot you right in the plate. Obviously, I'm not always thinking about being shot, but I'm using armor as an analogy, and so we're just sticking with it.
You need to change professions, Ed, if you're thinking about that all the
time. Yeah, right. The point that I'm making is, from the same perspective, the shielding that you have at home, you're setting that up in hopes that the radiation is going to be coming from a direction that is favorable for that shielding to catch the radiation. That's not how Murphy's Law works, right? We get the emergencies we didn't prepare for. So that's an awareness thing. And that's because I think going down this rabbit hole, most sort of normal, sensible people will look and say, well, in my house, where's the most effective place where I can get shielding from all angles? And they're going to end up settling on the basement, right? Because it's the easiest to fortify because there's dirt all the way around on one plane anyways. The problem is the human aspect. How long can you and your family stay in your basement down there pooping in your basement without power, without water, without clean air before somebody goes crazy enough and goes outside and, you know, just exposes everybody to the radiation?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a condescending way to anybody. I mean that is a legitimate human psychological factor that most people avoid. And if that one was considered first, all the other plans become really sort of clear because all the fantastical stuff goes out of the window. Right? Yeah. And then it becomes about, okay, how do we mitigate the very worst possibilities while understanding that in order for us to live a life that we're going to be okay living, we're going to have to accept some risk. There's, you know.
Oh yeah, and I've got a basement on my house, and that's the logical place. The first place that I looked at it. And one of the questions now, when you're dealing with as far as radiation, will your radiation come if you're dealing with the radiation? Is it going to come just straight down, or is it going to come at every angle possible? Or does it depend?
Yeah. So that's always the answer. Once you know, that's that Dunning-Kruger curve, right? It depends is the answer you always end up at. First you thought you knew a lot, you knew nothing. Then as you realize you know more, you realize how little you know.
Exactly.
Functionally, everything that we think about, let's say nuclear war and nuclear radiation and what's going to happen, is theoretical. And the reason I say that is because there's been very few times in human history where nuclear detonations have actually occurred.
Yeah.
Right. And the nuclear bombs of today are completely different. They're far more powerful. They have different designs. They can do different things with them. And so what's going to happen if this scenario unfolds is theory. And I think a lot of people would do well to start there and be like, okay, so everything that we think might happen could be completely wrong. That being said, it is not out of the realm of possibility for harmful electromagnetic radiation, so gamma rays and X-rays, no matter where the point source is, to shoot straight up into the ionosphere of the Earth and bounce straight back down on top of you. Just like you can with a ham radio, right?
Yeah,
like you can broadcast up, bounce that shit off the moon. You can. It's exactly the same concept. And so we call it sky shine when we're dealing with industrial radiography, where high energy photons will just bounce back down, and you'll be in a bunker that's 4 or 6 or 8 feet thick concrete, and then all of a sudden you're picking up radiation. You're like, oh, it's because there's no roof on this bunker. So it's a real thing. And yeah, that's a real risk.
So realistically, and I think a lot of people would think it is, if I can harden the roof, then I'm good. But you need to harden your sides also, correct? Okay.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people I think might get misconstrued is like, if I've got a super great roof on there, I'm good to go and stuff like that. But realistically, you need every side and your roof fortified then as much as you can as far as your shielding.
This is usually the part where I break a lot of not hearts, but a lot of people are like, oh, so there is a hope. Listen, if there's a radiation emergency so close to you that you think a hardened roof or hardened house is going to protect you from it, you're done. You're either, in all real terms, whenever this pops off or if it ever happens, we are either okay where we're at with the situation that we're in, or we're not.
Yeah.
And what I implore anybody watching this deal with first, I want you to have a lot of food inside your house. Lots of it. I want you to have a lot of water inside your house. Lots of it. Yeah. And I want you to have a robust plan for you and everybody in your house to poop and have it not get everybody sick for 3 weeks without having to go outside.
Yeah.
After that, if you want to start hardening your house, you've probably got everything else taken care of that meets all the realistic threat profiles for a post-nuclear event. After that, rock and roll. But be aware, like, hardening your house for a nuclear event looks like 4 feet of concrete in all directions.
Yeah.
Or having a home in a hill, right? Like it looks like a bunker. And most people, while they'll think about it and talk about it, most people are going to end up with maybe a little extra steel here, or maybe 1/4-inch lead sheets, and we're probably fine. The cost and labor and just energy input involved to put those defenses up versus using that time and energy to do realistic preparations, like the ability to, if you've already got food stored and water stored and you have a way to sort of deal with your sanitation, medical is pretty important. If you've got all that done, obviously defense is important. The ability to grow some of your own food without having to go outside your house, that's a pretty useful thing. Like if you've got a grow operation, and I don't mean,
Yeah.
like a marijuana grow up, I mean like an operation, but it doesn't have to be outside, but if it's connected to your house, if you can put a tarp over it so that, radioactive particulate matter can't just get inside there, and you can just walk outside one door of your house into your greenhouse. That's the sort of thing, that's where people start sort of reasonably going. I got away from the idea of creating a bunker out of most North American houses a long time ago, because these houses, as you know, are thin skins of, well, they're thin skin, mostly they're thin skins of vinyl over top of, batting insulation with a little bit of wood in between them, and then some gyprock.
Oh yeah, I mean, with a real good pocket knife, you can get into a house. I mean, cut the
Absolutely.
vinyl siding, cut the little rigid insulation, and cut through the drywall, and here's Johnny's in your house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And compared to that real good pocket knife, a burst of ionizing gamma rays is like a tank.
yeah, oh yeah, and that's one of the things I've seen hitting on the food, the water, sanitation, and that goes back to the whole preparedness aspect and sustainability aspect. A lot of people, the first thing they do, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to buy 15 guns, and then I've got to buy. Well, we might have nuclear fallout. I need a gas mask." And they've spent $15,000 on this stuff, and it's like,
Yep.
"Hey, how long can you sit in your house and be able to eat?" And they're like, maybe like a day or two. And it's like, cool, those you've totally lost, at the whole aspect of all this. Too many people are focused on the toys and the fun stuff as opposed to the stuff that's realistically going to keep you alive.
It gets worse for most people. I did one of these interviews last January with a young lady, which it was good, but I gave a response at one point that she didn't see coming. So yeah, how long can you stay in your house with all this stuff? But how long can you and your family actually stay inside your house? No, there's no power. There's no water. There's nobody coming over. There's no going outside.
Yeah.
Who do you know who's really done that exercise with their family over a period of time where they're like, yeah, we could stay inside our house, literally inside our house for 7 days, no problem.
Yeah.
It's not happening, right? In most cases, and the outliers, blessings be upon the families who go together and do this as a family endeavor. In most cases, there is one person in the family who's looking into this stuff and like, all right, I got to sort of prepare this household for when shit hits the fan.
Oh yeah.
Your family is not ready to be locked up in their house, right? They're not ready to be locked up inside the entirety of that house for 2 days, let alone one room for 48 hours.
Oh yeah, and
So
I can see that a lot of people wouldn't. I would say probably 99% of the people couldn't go 7 days not leaving the house with what they've got. Realistically, I could. We could stay in our house for 7 days with what we've got. If it went right now, I'm in my shop now. I can walk to the house, lock the doors, in 7 days we'd be super fine. So,
and that makes you a statistical anomaly, which is cool because in the sort of the event we're talking about, statistical anomalies are going to be the ones who tend to survive. So good for that. But like most people don't even consider the exercise. Most people need to be able to get out of the house. Like this is a common term, right? Got to get out of the house. Like you got out of the house 3 times. You went and got groceries. You dropped the kids off at school, and then you got back. Yeah, but I feel so cooped up. Well, if you feel so cooped up now, when everything's fine, in the middle of an emergency, that gets worse. And it's not about having the right supplies. It's about having the right psychology. It's about pre-gaming this shit in your head so many times that if it ever happens, it's like, okay, now shit's going to get really weird for a while. The best thing we can do is close the doors, board them up, put up a bunch of plastic, I like to say if you've got a house with some extra rooms, one of the bedrooms becomes your air cell, just because most people don't have their own, self filtration units for their houses. But if you block everything else off, and then one of the bedrooms, you put good air filters, like the really high end furnace filters in the window, and then you put like some sheeting on the door, leave that window open so that there's some air transfer that is filtered so that the radioactive particles can't get in there. Obviously, that room becomes contaminated, but you then have air in and out to the house. And so people with that extra room that they can dedicate to that will fare a little bit better than people who can't give up that extra space.
And talking about staying, in your house, when we saw the pandemic that came through, a lot of people didn't know what it was going to do, whether you were actually going to have a 50% mortality rate. I had set the property up, and I told my wife, I'm like, if this is for real, we're going to shut the gate and we're going to hang out here for 6 months. And I'm like, nobody's coming in, nobody's going out, kind of thing. And she's like, are we able to do that? And I was like, I didn't plan this stuff for, shits and giggles. I'm like, we're going to close the gate and stay here. And she was like, okay. So that's kind of the way I've set a lot of my stuff up, is totally independent, shut the gate, and we're staying here. So
which is the best move. Nobody ever wants to be their own refugee.
Yeah.
It is a very vulnerable place to be in. Lots of people will, especially in larger centers, will spend a lot of time thinking about, well, how am I going to get to the fallout shelter in this scenario, right? And the problem with your fallout shelter is the fallout shelter itself. It probably will keep you safe from radiation. The problem is literally everybody else is trying to get there too. And literally everybody else is in, hindbrain panic state and operating out of caveman mentality. And it's not a safe place. It's never a safe scenario.
Well, think about like the Katrina, when they took everybody to the football stadium. That place was a stinking madhouse from what I saw. People getting raped, everything else. It's like they just threw everybody in there. And then you've got to think about, too, the sanitation, and then, people behaving badly and all that. That's a big thing. Hey,
yes.
Ed, let's get Chuck wanted you to touch about the potassium iodide tablets. What's your thoughts on it and that kind of stuff? I know it's not a magic bullet. Everybody rushes out and it's like, I've got to buy these things. I've got to buy these things. And some people are like, that's my magic bullet. I've got these. I'm safe.
They call them anti-radiation pills, which is marketing. Okay. And all this stuff is Googleable. Like don't believe anything that I'm saying just because I'm saying it. This should all be, fact checked by a couple different sources. Potassium iodide, what it does is it puts clean iodine into your thyroid before you go ahead and eat contaminated food or drink contaminated water. One of the reasons I advocate that you have a lot of food and water stored in your house is so that you can go for weeks without having to venture outside and eat anything that may have been contaminated by, radioactive fallout. And radioactive fallout can happen, doesn't have to happen from a thermonuclear weapon. It can happen from radiation accidents. There's lots of accidents that happen. Like now the news is, it's sort of in vogue for the news to report, chemical spills and hazardous material spills, and that shit always happens. That's never not happened. It's just now people are like, oh, let's talk about it in 2023 because we don't want to talk about the last 2 years. Let's find something else that's scary.
Yeah.
So like that's the realistic version of that. Radioactive waste spills as they're being driven by truck is a thing that hazmat teams, fire departments, and CBRN teams are all trained to deal with because they happen. So it's not inconceivable that you might have to deal with airborne radioactive particulate fallout without there being a World War III scenario. What that effectively means is specific isotopes will fall onto your crops and into your water sources and contaminate them should you eat that food. And if you're eating food that somebody else prepared or packaged food from somewhere else, the possibility exists that that food might be contaminated and then brought to you for you to consume.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do as sort of phase one of the potassium iodide plan is take care of your own food and water needs first. If you have a farm or a homestead or like an open water source on your property, that is your plan in that event, then you are immediately looking at a place where you're like, oh, okay, so if there is radioactive particulate fallout, I run the risk of having contaminated food. I'm going to back up to what I said before about having a way to detect radiation. Let's put this, there it is. Okay. Don't let the news tell you whether or not there's contaminated crops or contaminated water. If you have livestock, crops, or water that are part of your sort of preparedness plan or just your regular living, then it behooves you to have a way to monitor those critical food sources for radiation contamination. So small personal dosimeters are where it's at for that. Because if there is none, you don't have to worry about employing any of your sort of, second or third level defense tactics or, whatever you're going to do. You don't have to worry about saturating your thyroid with iodine. It's not super healthy for humans to saturate their thyroids with iodine. The reason that the potassium iodine pills are there is so that you can avoid the far less healthy thing, which is to saturate your thyroid with radioactive iodine.
Yeah.
So neither is really great. It's just the lesser of the two options. Certainly, if you've got a bunch of KI pills, potassium iodine or potassium iodate, they both do the same thing. You just need a little bit more of the one to be effective. But they're in usable doses when you buy them. Oh shit! Where was I going with this?
Are they useful to have?
Yes, they are, but like, okay, so if you're waiting to get a news alert or something on the radio saying, hey, there's been a thermonuclear explosion, go ahead and start popping your KI pills now. That's not the right time. Now, if you don't have any way of telling when the radiation's coming, how much there is, or any of the other sort of radiation protection facets, then maybe for you it is the right time. And if that's the situation of someone watching this, now or in the future. Again, I don't want to sound condescending. However, if you are able to tell when the radiation is coming or not, or if you are about to eat contaminated food, that's the time to take the KI pills because we know they're not great for us. I would rather be able to identify whether a threat that I am, putting a defense mechanism into my body to defend against is present before I went ahead and ingested that. Thereby, so I'm not going to take them when I don't need them and potentially hurt myself. And also, I'm still going to have them when I need them. I've seen on the internet, people are concerned about potassium iodide, about people scamming the pills. Potassium iodide has gotten really expensive as a supply and demand issue, but at its core, it's a salt. It costs more money to make contaminated potassium iodide than it does to just have the clean stuff. So in all but very few exceptions, like if you were to tell me, hey, there's pallets of KI pills coming over from China right now to be, freely handed out to the masses in America, I'd be like, that looks like a trap. I'd be like, meh.
That's got fentanyl in it, is what it's got.
Like, oh, so first you fly the balloon over and then you give the non-medicine medicine. Oh, okay. See how that's going. But that's,
hey, never look back. Wanted to know, is it true that you don't need them if you're over 40 years old? And I've heard some stuff about that.
No, it's no. So the thought process, and I am not a doctor. Okay. The thought process is, well, once you reach a certain age, cancer of the thyroid takes sort of so long to develop, and maybe it won't develop, and you could probably just not worry about it. That's one of those things. Like, Ki pills are this thing that unless you work in the nuclear industry, like at a nuclear plant that may experience emergencies, most people have never taken them. Most people are getting information off the internet that is mostly theoretical.
Yeah.
If I'm over 40, and I am, just and there's a nuclear emergency right now, and I know that I am the head of this household, and I have people, places, and things to take care of, to show good stewardship over, to protect. Then I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that something stupid like a little bit of radioactive iodine isn't able to hurt me.
Gotcha.
I got more important shit to do than get thyroid cancer and and then have that be a problem, right? While I'm trying to make sure that all the people that I love are safely stewarded through whatever crisis is. So, Nat, if you need it, if you're eating food and drinking water that's contaminated, take it. And I mean, yeah, I said these things they're comparatively expensive because they're cheap to produce. They're just being sold for a lot of money right now because the market supply of them is really small.
Yeah.
But they are useful to have.
And that's what I've read a little bit on it, and that's some of the stuff I saw. It's like if you're over 40, the thyroid cancer is going to take like 20 to 30 years to actually show up, and then some guys are like, screw it, I'll be 70 then. I don't give a damn if I've got cancer. I'm going to die anyway. And it's that's because
that's based on the assumption that radioactive iodine is the only thing that you're dealing with. It's the only problem you're dealing with, right? Yeah. Again, let's get back to the psychology of the human animal, right? And the human animal in crises is under stress. And everything that human animal can do to reduce the stress, perceived or real, that it's under in that time of crises will make that human more effective at the things that they want to do. So even if it is a placebo effect, i.e., it's not really going to protect you because the cancer will take so long. Even if that's true, by taking it and going, well, you know what, this isn't going to be a problem I have to deal with. That's one thing that you can slot that stress off and put some other stress that you are absolutely going to have to deal with into its place.
Oh, yeah.
So again, I preface all that by giving all the reasons why taking them erroneously, like when you don't actually need them, why that's a bad idea. But that sort of concept is the same as me saying, as a career radiographer, I'll just pick up enough radiation, every day. It won't be a life-threatening amount, but who cares? So I lose 5 years off my life, or maybe when I'm 60 or 70, I get leukemia. I don't care because I don't want to be alive then anyways. I don't think that's the right way to think about it, right? Like,
I agree.
Life is supposed to get harder, not easier. And get on my soapbox. I believe life is designed to get harder, not easier. It's not supposed to, as we get older, things aren't supposed to get more simple. They're supposed to get more complicated, and we are supposed to grow, develop, and become more resilient to defeat them. Right up onto the point where life inevitably wins and we die. But there's no sense giving up before that.
Exactly.
There's none. Like I intend to be a 70-year-old who is educating the next crop of 20-year-olds on how to do real shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't want to. Yeah, and I don't want to put a timeline and be like, I'm almost 45. I'm like, 30 years, I'll be 75. I would like to live past 75 without thyroid cancer or something like that. So, and like you, teach the next generation, and that's one of the big things I hate to see about people that aren't educated about stuff. The whole homesteading and sustainability stuff. We lose those people every day. The old ways. Those people die every day, and that's encyclopedias every day that we're never going to get back, and that we just lose every day. So I can get on a soapbox for that for a while.
A lot of the new preparedness, survival, and to some extent, although I'm not an expert on homesteading, but the material that I read in those three categories, more and more, I see that they tend to be built around having like they are a library of knowledge. And I grew up with old guys teaching me stuff. And when old guys would teach me things, they wouldn't give me an exhaustive library of all the knowledge and facts. They were adept at boiling it down to the simple things that you needed to do, and
Yeah.
and they didn't worry so much about having all these facts. Now I like the idea that we have what is effectively an unlimited access to unlimited information. I also don't like the fact that we have what is effectively an unlimited access to unlimited information, because lots of it's bullshit. Lots of it doesn't wash in the real world. And the thing that the old guys who are always passing away, what they took their lifetime to figure out was what's bullshit, what washes for real, and
Yeah.
what's book shit.
Yeah.
And more works that are being produced now are being produced to accommodate a sort of a culture that wants to have the book knowledge, all the information, all the different ways to do something, rather than this is the one thing that you do in this situation. Now move forward.
Oh yeah.
So
And I see that too. All these people are experts on everything now, and it's because they watched a YouTube video. So it's like, oh yeah, I know about this, I know about that, and it's like, okay, cool, come on over and show me how to do that. And then they're like,
yep.
I just watched a video on it.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, and I see a lot of that stuff. It's just nobody, everybody can watch the YouTube video, but nobody knows how to actually get their hands dirty and do the stuff. So
Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
yeah. Oh yeah. And I try to teach with our group. I mean, we teach classes and stuff like that. We killed some pigs a couple weekends ago, and I invited members of our group. I'm like, if you want to learn how to do a pig, we're going to be doing 4 of them. Come on down. I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to butcher, probably Saturday, we're going to butcher a beef here. I hadn't decided if the weather's going to be right or not, but we're probably going to have a cow hanging from the bobcat Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of some of the stuff. I'll have people over, and it's like, this is homestead butchery. It's not going to be charcuterie and all these great and wonderful steaks and everything, but by God, you can eat it. So, so my ribeyes won't be all the same thickness, but they're going to taste good. It doesn't matter. So, well, Ed, let's shoot in. What about as far as the chemical stuff? We kind of covered the radiation. What about as far as chemicals and stuff like that? I mean, everybody's freaking out about the Ohio train derailment and stuff like that. And I know chemicals is a huge aspect. I mean, but as far as some preparedness stuff for that, I know everybody's going to jump out and be like, "Oh, I've got my gas mask. I'm okay." So, or I've got my N95. I'm great.
What am I holding up?
What are we doing with all that?
Got a beard?
Yeah. Oh yeah, shave it.
Okay. So, rule 1: if you do gas mask shit, you're clean shaven, because just because you can put it on and hold the filter and go and say, "Oh look, I've got a seal." When you're moving around and rolling and picking things up and exerting yourself, and you have facial hair, that seal tends to go away. And or when you're dealing with, let's say, highly oily chemicals, certain chemical classes that move by capillary action. So they, the same way that, you drop a cotton wick in oil, it sucks it up. That's capillary action for those that don't know. It just gets on the outside of your hair at the bottom of your mask, and just goes right up into your mouth. So you're shaving, which means that you can't just grab a gas mask and put it on and go. There's some prep work required, which means that probably what you need to not be in the exact place of the emergency when the emergency happens. Also, all the same preparedness things that we just talked about for particulate radiation apply for gas, for hazardous chemical releases. Also, hazardous chemical releases, hate to, be the one to inform anybody who doesn't already know, are literally happening all the time, all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Now, I do not want to diminish the effect that the spill in Ohio has had on the people of the region. Because I'm not saying that the fact that they're happening all over the place means we should ignore them. What I am saying is the level of hysteria that is being sort of fostered around this particular incident is nothing short than the old Iraq War movie Wag the Dog.
Yeah.
If you remember that one, that was about telling everyone where to look and having
Yeah.
everyone do so.
Oh yeah.
So that's the framework that I approach that in, is that. Now, also, I am literally a country away. I'm thousands and thousands of miles away from that area. And so there's a fair sort of counter argument to be made to that. Anything that I say, I can just say whatever the hell I want because it doesn't affect me. I get that. In real terms, respiratory protection is a highly effective way to get yourself out of that sort of situation and still be alive, because most of those things that are going to kill you quickly get in through your lungs. They're inhaled, right? And so having some way to protect your breathing while you get the fuck out of there, GTFO, is a useful thing. And companies will make escape respirator hoods or bite block respirators that you can get, which they have a very short time span, but they're available. If you're a DIYer, you can get a scuba system, right, which just has a mouthpiece, and then your beard is sort of irrelevant at that point. You can just hook up some fresh O2 with that scuba system while you drive out of town. There's ways around it, but the biggest prevailing thing is to not be where those accidents are at. And where those accidents are at are industrial zones, major highways, dangerous goods routes, and rail lines.
Yeah.
And if you're near one or more of those, you run the risk at some point, sometime in your life, of that being a threat, being a factor. If that is, then yeah, having a way to protect your breathing while you leave is a very effective. I guess another sort of side note in there is wildfires. We deal up in BC where I'm at. We've been dealing with wildfires every year for quite some time now, and the thick smoke gets it becomes an irritant really fast, and so being able to put a gas mask on is useful. But for any of those types of chemicals which will affect your skin, which you need to don an entire suit for and have rubber gloves and rubber boots for, most people aren't prepared to do more than just leave the area. What a lot of people don't realize about those that sort of that PPE is it doesn't decontaminate very well. If you're dealing with a chemical that's already not really all that threatening, then it decontaminates just fine because water will probably wash it off.
Yeah.
But if you're dealing with a chemical that requires a Class C, Class B, or Class A suit, probably and in professionally, those suits are thrown away. They're disposable, right?
Yeah.
Those $100 suits and $300 gas masks and $100 filters in the real world of professional CBRN or hazmat management, emergency crisis management, they walk out there, they do whatever they have to do, and then all that stuff comes off and goes in the garbage, and they get a fresh one.
Oh yeah.
And civilians don't want to look at that and be like, oh, so for a couple of days working around a contaminated homestead on the outside, it's going to be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of gear that I then have to throw away and then have a way to sort of get in and out of the house. It becomes unmanageable really quickly. So while I'm an advocate for having half mask respirator or a full face or a bite block, some sort of respiratory protection in a vehicle with you, should you be driving home and then your way is blocked because there's this orange cloud, right, of whatever gas in front of you, and you can just put that on and drive through it. That's a useful thing. But I think most people would be surprised at how much equipment it actually takes to operate in those environments. Like when back in the day when I used to climb into tiny little pressure vessels and you go all the way down and all the wet shit inside there wanted to kill you, we would go through cases of protective gear every shift.
Oh yeah, and that I talked to one of my buddies that was in the infantry, and when we went into Iraq, he was telling us about their mop suits and everything, and he was like, "You people don't understand how much stuff you would actually go through." And he was saying the same thing you said. It's thousands and thousands of dollars. They would don those suits and stay in those, and then it's like, yeah, these things we don't know if they're contaminated for sure or not. And he's like, we trash them when we get new ones. He said, you should have seen the piles of the suits that were there. And he was like, and then also he said, trying to function in one of those things, he was like, forget it. So he was like, you're in a super big plastic bag, is what you are, just sweating your ass off in there.
Yeah. Yeah. That being said, as it relates to the disaster in Ohio, if I was around that area or anywhere near it, and I looked up in the sky and the news said, "Oh, we're burning all those chemicals," and that's the cloud right up there, and don't worry, it's fine. I would not believe that.
Yeah, that's where you get the hell out of there right then. So.
And obviously most people are going to look at it and say, well, for reason X, Y, and Z, I can't get the hell out of there. I've got this, this, and this. And to that I say, I get it. It's going to be the same thing with radiation. It's going to be like, well, no, I can't leave because of this, or I have to leave because of this. There's always going to be a thing, and that's life's not easy. It's not going to be easy. When it comes to specifically dealing with chemicals that are on rail cars and on trucks, there's so many of them. They do so many different things. They interact with each other in such a wide spectrum of ways. What you're trying to do is protect from the sort of the majority of them, and then the easiest way that they have to hurt you.
Yeah.
And so respiratory protection is that. Now, just in case anyone is thinking, your fancy cabin air filter in your vehicle, right? If you have it, it's got a filter that you replace and makes the air conditioning cleaner or whatever. That's not the same thing. That doesn't filter the air coming in. Drive up the street where someone's got a grass fire going or something, burning something, and you'll smell the smoke, and that should tell you that. Like, that's not an adequate level of protection.
Yeah.
But I think for most people, all I have are the Seaburn gas masks here. But I think most people, if you're in your house, I like to use a layered approach. I like to have with every fire extinguisher, I've got an IFAC hanging off every fire extinguisher, and then like a half mask respirator or like a bite block, like an emergency escape respirator. And the reason I do that is because they're inexpensive and they'll fit lots of different faces immediately. Half masks, the little half masks I use for kids, I use kid size, and then bite blocks for enough for whatever adults will be in the house. And the way that I run that is there's those stations are on every floor, and you can just run and grab one if the house is on fire or if there's a green cloud of gas coming up the hill from the industrial park. And from there, we move to a place where all the sort of full face gas masks are stored. And if you're just sheltering in your house, they don't have to be expensive CBRN gas masks. Your house is the shield that prevents most of the really terrible stuff from getting inside. It's the finer stuff you're protecting yourself from. And so they could be the 3M or North full face gas masks with the sort of regular organic vapor cartridges. That's probably good enough. And so for people on a budget, that's a good consideration, because it means that you can afford to have more of them available because you're already planning to pretty much stay in your house.
Yeah.
And then a smaller amount, depending on how many people live in the house, that can be access that are the sort of the real. I keep them with a filter on, a good to go filter, inside plastic bags. I did a video on YouTube last year in the summertime trying to do first aid in a gas mask. And one of the things I demonstrated was, when you're busy worrying about all sorts of other things, screwing on a filter. without being able to look at it, just how much time it takes. So we keep these staged. But like this, there you go. This sort of deal, I keep a few of these in a certain spot together so that the family can all go there if we have to get into a vehicle and like drive somewhere else.
Gotcha.
And the other consideration in that case is a good 4-gas monitor. You can get them from any of the sort of industrial supply places. They don't deal with a lot of the toxic gases. Most of them will just do lower explosive level, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen disulfide. But what those monitors will tell you is when you've got enough oxygen to breathe. Because as good as any of these masks are, if there isn't 19.5 to 21% oxygen in the air, these become really ineffective really fast. Yeah. So I suggest that, and those 4-gas monitors are not inexpensive. They're $500, $600, $700, $700 to $1,000. Some of them can be had for less, but if you think you have to evacuate from a gas scenario, I would like to have at least one of those monitors in every vehicle.
Right.
I think that's a worthwhile goal.
Lawrence wants to know, would Tyvek suits be something good to have?
So Tyvek is Tyvek makes a bunch of different levels, a bunch of different grades. There's regular Tyveks.
He's probably talking about the ones that you can get at like Sherwin-Williams or Home Depot, just a white Tyvek coveralls, I would say. That's the most readily available here.
Yep. I've got lots of those. No. They're useful to have for doing, dirty jobs. So from that standpoint, yes. They're not robust, so they rip easily. And if you're in a situation where you don't want the gas getting inside the suit, you don't want one that's going to rip really easily. So no for that. They are not flame retardant at all. So like not at all. They burn really easily, and when they burn, they melt to you. And then not only are you in a gas environment, you also have burns to large surfaces of your body. So no, in any sort of threat environment, I'd rather use the outside layer of my house as the suit than Tyvek. Now, Tyvek makes there's layers up like the Tychem 200. I think it's Tychem 200. I'll have to double check on that, but they make layers of more chemical resistant suits, and they do offer you more flexibility. Just be aware that, like lots of people, like I've got one of these Vera safety suits, and this is a Kapler Z200, just rebranded, which is fine. Mira and Kapler have a good relationship, so that works out. And I think it's made in the USA, which is very nice. But when you put that suit on, you got to make sure that the gas isn't going to get in around the mask and onto your neck. So you got to have it tight. You got to make sure that whatever gloves you wear, that everything is taped up. Same for the boots. Okay, there's no taking it off to pee. So if you're going to be in it for a while, you're going to have some sort of situation sorted out so that you can pee inside that suit. It's little shit like that kills people, because if you've ever been holding some sort of a bowel movement for a couple hours, you're just like, nah, you know what? I'd rather die. This just has to come out. And you unzip that thing, and you're still in a contaminated environment, or you've just gotten out of it, and you haven't been washed with 100 or 200 gallons of water to decontaminate the thing. Then all of your preparation is for naught. Yeah. So these suits
we were on an asbestos removal job when I was in college, and I came outside and I saw one of the guys, and I looked to myself and I said, what the hell? He had taken his mask and drilled a hole to where he could smoke while he still had his mask on doing asbestos removal. Yeah, I'm like, perfect. What kind of freaking moron are you? So right. I was like, okay. So,
right. And so like with all this stuff, the ones who take it seriously are really quickly going to realize that, okay, I'm either in for a penny or in for a pound. I'm either going to be like, yeah, it's not something that I can realistically prepare for to the extent where I'm actually going to be prepared for it. So, and in that case, because again, if that's you, you should be able to do something, right? And so if that's you, then what I want you to do is prioritize a piece of equipment that will at least let you know when there's a problem around you.
Yeah.
So like from the radiation piece, at least get some way to detect it. You can't do all the other stuff. At least get that. From the gas attack thing, like get yourself a gas monitor,
Yeah.
or become part of a group in your area that because almost every fire hall in every small town has some sort of gas monitoring system in place. Civil defense management agencies have that too. Maybe you can join a group where somebody's got the detection equipment, and then they're going to send out a signal if that's a threat that's in the area. Do that first, because knowing what the threat is such a big component to being able to deal with it. You can have like you said, you can have 15 guns and no training and not know how to do any right and there's just one of you, and so you're asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, which conveniently is when the marauders are going to come break into your house. Like the information is really useful. So before everyone goes out and buys their first gas mask, now if respiratory protection's already with sort of within your bailiwick, and like you're just like I want to upgrade, okay, that's great, we can talk about that, that's cool. But before you go out and do that, how close are you to rail lines in your area? How close do you live to highways? And how close do you live to industrial locations?
Yeah.
And when you know those three things, then you can start like, okay, the rail, whatever the rail line is 2 miles from the homestead, what company owns it and what do they transport? Is it just grain, right? Is it grain and oil? Okay, cool. Because lots of rail lines don't transport the really crazy, out of this world heavy shit, right? There has to be only certain rail lines transport the really hazardous stuff, just like only certain highways do. They have established hazardous materials routes. So find out if you're near one of those. And if you're not, you may be better served to have more food and water in the house, or buy a roll of poly sheeting so that you can literally plastic up your entire house if you needed to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, Ed, can people buy stuff since you're in Canada? Can you ship to the U.S. stuff, or is it too good?
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was a pain in the ass or not.
Here's what I'll say. So I sell the mirror safety stuff, so that the gas masks and that. But Mirror Safety is an American company, and if you buy from them, then it doesn't have to be shipped all the way to Canada and then shipped all the way back to you, because customs is a thing,
Oh yeah.
So if you're in America, then order through Mirror Safety.
Okay.
And by the same token, I do a lot of on the medical side. But like, if you're in America, Chuck Peoples is on this live stream. And if Chuck can't help you, then Refuge Medical and Refuge Training are friends of mine too. Like, Americans have a lot of options right now, and I think you guys are in a really great place to be selective, and then also be able to spend your money appropriately.
Yeah, Chuck came and did a 2-day class for us down at my place. Yep. So it was awesome, by the way.
Yep, I saw that post. I'm looking forward to meeting him in real life. We're internet friends.
Well, hey, I'm going to meet you too, so I'll be down there. And then I'll tell you what, Shelly with Two Old Crows Homestead, Shelly will be there, and then Dog Creek Farms, Jake is going to be there too. So you'll get to meet them too.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll be the first time I've been to America since 2020.
Really? Wow.
I tried to come last year, but I got turned around at the border.
Wow. You need to grab Tim and make him come down too. So he's going to come in the fall to Self-Reliance, is what he told me. So good. That's his plan for right now. So
good.
Yeah, Shelly said she looks forward to meeting you. So we'll have to carve out some time and hang out a little bit. But
I'll be there. I'll be there all weekend.
All right. I plan on getting down there Friday early morning. something like
Nice.
that. Early, yeah, early, well, mid morning, probably something like that, because it's only 2.5 hour drive from my house, so I'm really close. So,
That's nice. It's 40-hour drive for me.
are you going to drive or are you going to fly in?
Oh yeah, I'm driving. I'm not flying.
All right, I didn't figure
The
you could fly. I had to
the
ask
the
though.
the airlines, air travel isn't what it's gone. As far as I'm concerned, air travel isn't what we had come to enjoy. As soon as 2020 hit, air travel became a thing that was like, man, no.
Oh yeah. Well, my wife asked me. Her dad lives in Florida, and she's like, when can we go down there? And I was like, we're driving. And she was like, we're not gonna fly. And I was like, nope. I said, I'm driving. I was like, I could care less about flying anywhere unless it's on my little buddy's plane that he's got. He'll
Yep.
fly me wherever I want to.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah, and same. I mean, there's I guess I made an overarching statement, and the truth is, my buddies with float planes and some of the smaller companies around here, and the people I know that fly helicopters, that's fine. I don't mind. That's
oh
totally
yeah.
great. But like large airline travel, my trust is effectively eroded completely.
Oh yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is to be on there and have them tell me I have to do something mandatory to them,
Mhm.
and that if I don't, I'm under arrest. Like, nah, no thanks. I already live in Canada. I already deal with that bullshit enough. So
Yeah.
I don't need to increase the amount of that bullcrap that I deal with.
Oh yeah, one of the guys, I've known him forever, and if you look at him, he is the most podunk, country-looking guy. You would think he didn't have like a third grade education, but known him forever. He has his own private airstrip, and he is a certified airplane mechanic. He can
Yeah.
take his two planes that he's got, tears it down, certifies it, rebuilds, does all that stuff. And he told me, he's like, whenever you want to go somewhere, he said, we'll just fly. He said, we'll just go flying around Woodburn one day and look around at stuff. I'm like, that will be fun. So
Yeah.
I told my youngest one, I was like, when you want to go fly, I said, you can see, I said, we'll fly over the house and you can see everything. He goes, Dad, that'd be awesome. So, I
Yep.
mean, him and his wife will jump in the plane and they'll fly out to Colorado and go skiing for the weekend and fly back.
Yep.
So,
I've got a neighbor like that here who got his pilot license. He's not a mechanic, but he looked around and said, I should be able to fly myself wherever I want to. And I was like, you should.
yeah.
So it works out very well.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Well, we're coming up. We've got like almost an hour and 15 minutes. Is there anything else that you want to throw out to some people as far as radiation, chemical stuff, and everything like that? I mean, I could sit here till dark and talk about all this stuff with you. So, but is there anything else that you want to tell everybody before we scoot out?
Yeah, don't panic.
Yeah,
Like it's a it's whatever evil is pushing things around in this world. It's what it wants. It wants you to be panicked, and it wants you to hate other people. It wants you to be divided. It wants you to be in a constant state of warring against someone.
yeah,
Don't play the bullshit. Um, find people around you, like close to you, that you can affect positively, and do that. It's the best weapon we have against whatever this is that's going on. Um, if you have questions like how do I not panic about this stuff, I have some. I can give you some answers, but really what it boils down to is whenever you feel like you're being pushed to like go really fast into a thing, it's probably time to take a step back and have a look at that thing. Just take a breath.
yeah,
I like to tell people to get outside and get training, and that applies broadly. Like I'm a big fan of anytime I want to learn something, I like to go seek out an expert and trade some of my money for a little bit of their experience, so that my learning curve is shorter. I think that generally applies to probably most people who are in this space right here. So that message isn't so much for everybody who's listening, but for them to pass on, like, go outside, know that the world outside of these sort of electronic death boxes that we're attached to all the time, the world is a large and beautiful place, and we are meant to thrive in this life. We're not supposed to be locked up in little boxes.
Yeah.
So be sure whatever we're doing every day that we are thriving, we're growing, we're doing hard shit, we're becoming harder to kill. Life's
Yeah.
going to win in the end anyways. So don't give it any quarter. Don't give it any surrender. Just keep getting after it.
Oh yeah, and I like to tell people is, you know, everybody reacts with fear. Have a plan and prioritize that plan. Have a written down plan of what you want to do, and don't worry if they come in and they're like, oh, you know, China is going to shoot nukes at us. Don't get scared. Just keep working that plan, your step by step plan, and do it that way. Don't run out and like, holy crap, I've got to buy this, I've got to buy that. Stay with your plan, because you're going to wind up buying a bunch of dumb shit if you don't work your plan. So
and we're human. You're going to not stay with your plan, and you're going to end up buying a bunch of dumb shit, and
yeah,
it's okay. But when you find yourself, you're like, you stop, you look around, you're like, oh shit, I just bought a bunch of dumb shit. That's when it's time to take a step back and be like, okay, cool. I give myself the permission to be a human, to be fallible, to screw up,
yeah,
but I'm moving forward. And if I find myself, you know, off my courses that way, then what I need to do is correct it and keep moving forward. We don't get to stop and just do nothing because we found ourselves not rigidly adhering to a plan. That doesn't work. We have to just keep moving forward.
yeah. And that, yeah, I mean, learn something new every day. Try to improve your position a little bit every day. It's a marathon and not a sprint. Too many people want to take the easy way out, and they're like, I can go spend $1,000 and be 100% prepared. It's like, that doesn't really work. So, but Ed, it's been good. I know you've got stuff to do. I've got stuff to do. So maybe we can do this again sometime soon, and we'll delve into the medical stuff next time. So
sure. Look, why don't we'll do a round table with Chuck down at Self-Reliance Festival. We'll spend an hour just talking about that stuff on camera.
oh yeah, we could do that for sure. I mean, that'd be good. I mean, Chuck, we might get a word in maybe, because Chuck likes to talk a whole lot, but maybe we can say 2 or 3 words with it. So, but yeah, that'll work, guys. I appreciate everybody coming, Chuck. Ed, I appreciate you being here and helping us. And yeah, Chuck said he's in, so we'll plan that. We'll plan on doing that. But guys, I appreciate everything. Ed, stay with me for just a second. I want to end the broadcast. All right, guys, y'all have a good day.